went for a walk, grabbed some more monsters. So we got some more monsters in the fridge now. Pretty good day overall. That being said now, so let's go through a handful of role selections. You thought what? Okay, so it's perception, Samo. I don't think that role was necessarily terrible. I was trying to showcase though that role didn't have good late game or like great late game, which in my opinion didn't have great late game. It's good early to mid, but the late falls off, so you might want to try to end earlier, etc. It's called a shrink because they shrink your head. Oh, nice. Okay, so let's jump on into role selections. I've been asked a handful of times to do some role selections, and so I think this is a good opportunity now to kind of walk through why I'd choose certain units, what I'd do about certain units, etc. So in this situation, I feel pretty good with two different openers in terms of large push. I've got Flower into either Nico or Ranger, or I've got Bone Crusher into Nico or Ranger, right? I think both of these in combination with either of these two units is pretty solid. Now, in my opinion, I think Nico Mata is a little simpler and easier to utilize when it comes to Bone Crusher and Honeyflower opens than Ranger is, as Ranger is a little bit more of a complicated split to make it work correctly every time. But I'd say that's potentially one option I would look at with this role. For opens. Then I'm looking for my tanks, right? Or how I'm going to utilize my tanks in this role. I've got Antler, which I think is a really solid tank. If I want a natural tank, that is. But looking at this role, I kind of wonder, okay, I need some sort of Swift component or Arcane here. And so I've got both Sandbadger or Yozora. If you're a little looking for a more comfy role in terms of an open, I think you could potentially drop Honeyflower and take Yozora here. I actually think if you're not confident with AoE, and I don't think many new players should take AoE, this is a pretty good Yozora role. Got a lot of opportunity to hold on wave 4 with both Ranger and Nico Mata, as well as potentially even a Windhawk for some of the more intermediate waves. Wave 9, for instance, you've got Windhawk value to go off of. But yeah, I think that's kind of where I'd look at with this all. I would potentially look at re-rolling and getting rid of something like Nico Mata after I've placed one of them. Realistically, I don't ever think it's worth putting more than one Nico Mata down in a game, just because I think they become quite bad value post 10, even at full stacks. They just kind of become that weird middle ground where they don't have enough health, but they don't honestly do enough damage to justify the health option. Right. So in this situation, I'd probably roll, maybe wait until post 10, but I would probably keep your Nico usage to a minimum. If you find that the game is very income heavy and by wave 7, you're feeling good, you can drop Nico Mata and look for a late game damage dealer. So in this situation, for instance, if I were to drop Nico Mata and I were to get something like Flower in my role, I think I'd take Flower for the sole reason that Flower helps me out a lot on wave 16, which is generally speaking, looking at this, a rather poor role for us overall because we don't have any AoE or fast damage. We do have good tanks, but I think Flower would potentially combine really well, or potentially look for a hold for 15 in a reroll here. Not having a dedicated magic damage dealer can be a little bit suspect. So something along the lines of a Poda could work really well. I also think that something along the lines of this as your opening role could work wonders as well. You've got Poda open, which I think is extremely strong. If you understand the split positioning, I think can work really nicely here. In all, I think this is actually a really solid role because it gives you a lot of opportunity depending on what you're strong with. And I think that's kind of nice. You've got basically every tank type under the sun, a couple different openers, a couple different damage dealing units, etc. So let's hop into another role here. I'm just doing cash out because it's easy to showcase what I'm looking at here. All right, so this one's a little bit more challenging, in my opinion. I think this role is a lot more challenging, to be honest. And so I think we've got a couple different options here for openers. I think personally, the easiest opener in this role to me is probably just straight up Zerker. Berserker is really, really strong because it basically can carry you 1 through 3 pretty easily, and 4 becomes somewhat of a formality rather than a challenge. I could say in this role, something along the lines of Berserker into Proton could work really well. And then for wave 3, you just go Atom. Double Atom Open is another good one here, correct, chat? Both those I think are solid. The thing for me is more or less, you've got some awkward units in this role that I don't know if I'd necessarily pick up. I don't think this is a very good Warg role for the sole reason that I don't like our non-alpha male debuffing options. We don't have any. So the only option here would be to go to like 3 stack, maybe a 4 stack if you put it in a plus sign or a windmill. So I really am not a huge fan of Warg here. I do think you could theoretically go for something along the lines of Elite Archer here to give you another option for pierce damage that isn't only Zerker. Because in my opinion, you could theoretically go Berserker as your swift tank-ish, mostly utilized as a tank here, and then use Elite Archer as your damage. You could, yes, not go for alpha males to buff Warg, but at a certain point, I don't think we need another natural tank to assist Antler. In my opinion, it's just not very good overall. And yes, HP buff does synergize relatively well with damage reduction luck. I think 1 or 2 pilgrims is actually really good in a lot of situations. Upgrading them to Lost Chieftains. As overall, they tend to be pretty strong for their magic damage value, but they're not necessarily the greatest. So I think you theoretically could get away with something along the lines of rerolling this maybe around like wave 7 or so. Again, I think with this roll, it comes down to if they've saved on you or if they're income sending again. And I think the biggest thing for me is with any roll for rerolling, you want to try to reroll when they potentially could large send you, right? I don't often use my reroll early unless I have just an utterly garbage roll. In most games, I'll try to wait it out until I need to use a reroll, right? Like they save on you. Let's say they save on you. Let's say you open on with Berserker and they save on you all the way to 1 through 7. Maybe reroll for a casket, right? Like 3 to 7, for instance. Right. I think the most opportune thing is just never needing to use your reroll because you've always got options, which is obviously optimistic. But I think that would be kind of how I'd look at this. I think you've got good single target damage with Elite Archer and multi-target damage with Elite Archer. You've got good single target damage with Berserker. Desert Pilgrim can be a solid enough option for yourself to scale with the magic damage here. If you really, really wanted a arcane tank, a true arcane tank, you theoretically could do something along the lines of Elite Archer open with like a Gate Guard on 3, and then try to go Gate Guard upgraded for wave 5. And let's jump into another one here. Okay, I think this is an interesting role. We've got a couple different options here. Again, pretty solid tank options in this game. I would argue a little bit of a lack of damage. And so if I had to look here and say what I'm looking at for an opener, to me, this is potentially even a reroll on one angle. For one reason and one reason only. I've got Butcher. if I can find something along the lines of a nightmare or anything like that early, you can go nightmare into something like else here to scale. I like the tank line of Boryazora. Casket can also work there. I think this opener could theoretically be Casket, but I worry a little bit about your wave 5 then. To me, as Troll is saying here, this roll does lack damage, and I think Sakura might be really solid for you. How much do you consider their Legion spells in your initial roll? They matter, but comfortable starts, I think, are more important. I wouldn't force something just because Magician's on the cards or Guardian Angel. But in this situation, I might look for a Nightmare just because I have Guardian Angel in the cards. So in this spot, I might go, okay, we got these options. I might re-roll here on 1 and look for that Guardian Angel option with Nightmare. I don't get it here. Shucks. That stinks, but then I might be able to transition into something else, right? I might transition into a Zeus open. I might still go with the Sakura open. It kind of depends, how you want to kind of go about that. I think spells should take into account, be taken into account when you're selecting your role, but I don't think it should always dictate your role, if that makes sense, Rover. And so in this spot, then I looked at, okay, I tried to roll on 1 to combine the Guardian Angel with the Butcher because I really didn't have any other good options there. I didn't find it, so I need a damage dealer. So we go Tempest and Halo, right? We go Tempest and Sea Dragon and Halo here. I think that's actually a pretty good opportunity. Alex, I don't necessarily disagree with Green Devil being decent here, but in my opinion, I think you also have the opportunity to go Yozora open with Sea Dragon, upgrade Sea Dragon for wave 5. Oh yeah, another good point here. So Troll mentions here, if you reroll on 1, you have the opportunity to get a T1 here. If you roll past wave 1, you have a lesser or 0% chance of getting a T1. I don't remember what it is, but you're, I believe, on wave 1 guaranteed another tier 1, something of the sort. There is some differentiations there. 0% after wave 2? Okay, that's what I thought. I couldn't remember though, so chat does confirm. So if you hate your tier 1, roll on 1. It's an honest option. There's also the opportunity though, and this is something that a little bit more controversial. You could also just take Gargoyle as your tier 1 here. It's not perfect, and I would recommend not spamming them in this situation, but you still do have then a cheap unit that actually split tanks pretty well and is moderately good until the late game as a split tank unit. So yeah, I think that's kind of how I'd look at that roll, and let's do one more here. I would totally pretend my Gargoyle is my T1. It's a solid T1. Okay, so I actually think this is a great role to showcase some different opportunities here. So let's say we jump into this role and we see Magician here. This is a situation in which Magician might actually dictate a little bit more on what I have for opportunities, as Rover asked earlier. So in this spot, I see 2 really good Magician options, Bazooka and Soulgate. So depending on how you want to go about this, you have really, really good opportunity in the mid to late game, right? And so let's say I'm going Zeus. I'm going Zeus as an opener, and I'll kind of just walk through what I like about this role for Zeus. So I have Zeus as an opener, which basically gets me through 1 and 2, pretty much no problem. I can place Wild Shroom down on 3. And when I have Wild Shroom on 3, you can pretty easily go for then a pretty hard worker push. You've got, Wild Shroom upgrade potential for 7, as well as you've got bunk shift on 6 into 7 as well. Now, let's say, okay, I don't like Zeus. I don't like Zeus, and I want something different here. You could also go something along the lines of this. So we've got Infiltrator to support our Yozora on wave 3 and 4 and 5. In most situations, people don't send Yozora on 4 very often, so you can shift for something like an Orchid on 6, and you've got a really strong late game. And I mean very, very strong late game with Antler surrounded by Soul Gates with Magician. So I think those are 2 different options, right? In this situation, though, let's say you went with Zeus here. I might try to re-roll around wave 9 or so. Pre-wave 10 is where I'd really say it. Pre-wave 10 to try and find a better Magician target for the Zeuses, right? And I think that's a pretty normal thing. Look for a better opportunity for your Magician, right? Because if you can get a Magician plus an APS or Magician plus a Disciple, your Zeuses are going to be much better off than just a Magician by itself, as there's just less synergy there, right? Look for that combo prior to the spell wave coming. And then if you were to go something along the lines of Yozora, I might consider, similar scenario, but this time instead of getting rid of, instead of looking for an option to better the Zeus, you're looking for an option to better the Soul Gate. And in my opinion, with Magician, you could get away with something like Ocean Templar as well as Ocean Templar is going to help you better tank with Yozora, Bunk, etc. You could also look for a transitional unit outside of Infiltrator. Let's say you want something to help you out tanking on, say, wave 15. As you feel really good on every other wave. You've got, a Bunk for wave 12. You've got a good tank for 13. You've got both of them for 14. But 15, you're a little nervous. You're not really that good on value. That's another option there, is to maybe drop the Infiltrator. Look for a better hold potential on 15. And then let's just see here if there's another one I can quickly showcase something quickly here. In this role, I'd say potentially Gatling, right? An important thing I'd say here is try to keep multiple carry damage units out of a role. So I think if you were to want to say like go Gatling here or go Nightmare, you need to choose one or the other. You don't do both. I also really don't necessarily love, going Nightmare without a dedicated healing unit most often in terms of Butcher, but you can make it work to go Nightmare Antler if you have good enough supporting cast, though it's still not necessarily my favorite. You've also got the opportunity here to go something a little bit, more exciting with the Bone Crusher again, etc. But traditionally, you want to try to keep, if you're going to go more than one carry, keep them with separate unit typings, right? Separate damage typings, as the same carry, just generally speaking, same damage type on a carry is never really going to be good, as you're going to be very, very suspect on, say, wave 13 if all of your damage is Pierce. Wave 14 if all your damage is magic. Does the vampire spell help support Nightmare sufficiently? Luck, that's a good question. I would argue yes. If you have enough tanks, in this situation, Antler to help, it's pretty solid to go vampire in that spot. If you feel like it is your only good damage dealing unit. Nightmare with vampire, though, does not compare in terms of scalability and sustainability to Butcher. So keep that in mind. It's not on the same level, I think, is how I'd kind of put it. So, yeah. I think that's kind of a good enough overview. Zaver, if you're still here, I hope that kind of helps out. I know this was your question to begin with, at least in terms of what I'm looking for in these situations, these roles. If you guys found this helpful, please make sure to comment below, like and subscribe, and I'll catch you guys next time. Cool. I hope that was kind of good. We're going to lose this lobby. What's going on, Joshua? We have been doing coaching a little bit different, Josh. Depending on your elo bracket, we've been trying to do it in custom lobbies with multiple players. Is full flower ever good post 1? Full flower in a game that you think will go to 21. Pixie? Oh, Sakura. Oh, Sakura. I don't know if I'd ever really say Sakura is that great post 1. We did it, boys. We're 69 again. All right.